Once upon a time, Nigeria, being an African country, was proclaimed the Giant of Africa. This title was not limited to the country's strength, largeness, or population. Instead, the nation was globally recognized for its natural resources. Now it has been a cause for alarm the moment the supposed Giant of Africa turned borrower with huge debts owed to China. Nigerians have started to lament the looming danger the Chinese loans tend to pose if the country fails to pay them back. One would wonder how these loans between Nigeria and China started, the conditions behind them, the duration of repayment, and the percentage given by China to Nigeria, and why China has been so generous about making these loans available to the Nigerian government. The financial services between Nigeria and China started in 1971 when both parties signed and established diplomatic ties for cordial business purposes. Since the official agreements between these two countries, Nigeria has leveraged on the goodness of China by always running to it for loans. These collection of loans have been passed on from one administration to another, and at this stage, the loan is becoming a concern and threat to the value and the future of Nigerians. A series of questions have been asked about why Nigeria opted for Chinese loans and whether the loans boosted Nigeria's economy. Meanwhile, the Department of Debt Management Office, DMO, has on several occasions explained why the Nigerian government succumbed to the persistent borrowings from China. In one of its press releases, the Debt Management Office highlighted that the federal government chose to borrow from China to diversify the sources of its borrowed funds and take advantage of a cheaper source of finance compared to other sources. In one of its press releases, the Debt Management Office highlighted that the federal government chose to borrow from China to diversify the sources of its borrowed funds and take advantage of a cheaper source of finance compared to other financial sources. It was later discovered that the loans were consensual, a mutual agreement between both countries with generous low-interest terms. As a result of these accords signed, the Nigerian government believes that there wouldn't be any serious cause for concern regarding the Chinese loans. The Debt Management Agency affirmed that the Chinese loans were collected at very low interest rates of 2.5% per annum with a repayment duration of 20 years and a moratorium of 7 years, which is in compliance with Section 41 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act signed in 2007. On this note, the Chinese loans were embraced because of their gracious low interest rates, which favor the Nigerian government and give them a long span of years to refund the loan, as well as lower debt services in the annual budget as against other commercial terms. With all being argued, Nigerians are yet to be convinced that the accruing loans from China would not plunge the nation's economy into waste in the present or future. The government's way of accumulating debt and its rising debt profile has been highly worrisome. Part of the worries is the possibility of Nigeria losing some, if not all, of its infrastructures to China, except Nigeria can keep up with its repayment contracts, which is not feasible due to the low level of productivity in the country. Insisting that the country's debt stock figure to gross domestic product is about 23%, which is to some extent very sustainable. As of 2020, the Debt Management Office confessed that the $3.121 billion loans Nigeria is owing China were project-tied. The money funds 11 projects, and some of the projects are the Nigerian Railway Modernization Project, Idu-Kaduna Section, Abuja Light Rail Project, Nigerian 4 Airport Terminals Expansion Project 2, Nigerian Railway Modernization Project, Lagos-Ibadan Section, Rehabilitation and Upgrading of Abuja, Kefi-Makurdi Road Project. As of December 2020, according to the Debt Management Office, Nigeria's most recent public debt was $86.3 billion, which is 32.9 trillion in Naira, of which China's debt was $3.121 billion. If Nigeria maintains its loan payment, China's debt is expected to be paid off by 2030, and the new borrowing will be cleared by 2038. But if Nigeria fails to meet up with the repayment contract, the fear of Nigerians for the future might be ascertained, and China might have to take over the projects built with the borrowed loans. China has in history taken sovereignty over some countries' valued assets when they couldn't meet up with their loans payment. Some of the countries that fell victim to China's debt trap were Sri Lanka, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola, and others. In some of these African countries, the Chinese have set up their own structure to take over some infrastructure they constructed for the countries that couldn't pay. Vividly, the Nigerian House of Representatives Committee carried out a session while investigating China and Nigeria's treaties and agreements. In Article 8, Section 1 of the Commercial Loan Agreement signed between Nigeria and the Export-Import Bank of China, the session reveals that China had relinquished Nigeria's sovereignty in the $400 million loans for the Nigerian National Information and Communication Technology Infrastructure signed in 2018. The federal government, in its defense of the worries attached to the loans, implores Nigerians to see the indebtedness to China from a positive side, indicating the need to improve the country's infrastructural facilities with the aim to revitalize the economy and make provision for more job opportunities, which can only be achieved through the collection of foreign loans due to the financial instability Nigeria has found itself. However, experts have warned the Nigerian government to quench its uncontrollable thirst for borrowing loans from the Asian country, which might lead to a regrettable situation, as history has shown that dependence on foreign loans has not contributed to or boosted the nation's economy. Also, the International Monetary Fund joined a host of others to counsel Nigeria to be careful of loans from China, imploring the country to take loans in line with the Paris Club arrangements, which are far from Chinese loans. Even though the federal government of Nigeria claimed that they are already paying the loans gradually by fulfilling the requirements, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and the industry still advised the government to review its borrowing parameters based on the country's debt-to-revenue ratio. The Debt Management Office believes the best way to combat the urge for loans is for the private sector to participate in infrastructural development in the country. So what do you think? Leave your comments in the comment section below, and don't forget to pray for Nigeria not to default on its loans to China. As always, stay blessed and stay motivated.